Hey garden friends, thanks for taking some time away from your garden to come see mine. I sure appreciate it. I know there's a lot of things out there to watch and I have a lot to show you today. The first thing we're going to start off with is all about the number one question this season, and it's winter kill. It got to like 21 below wind chill factor here in December, and some of the hardiest plants really took a beating, like this Pachysandra. Let's start here with the best and then go to the worst and see what we're going to do about it. So right off the bat, I have to tell you, I love Pachysandra. It reminds me of all the old houses I grew up around. And last year, this was just completely covered with Pachysandra. We had that winter anomaly and it's knocked it back, but you can see there's all new growth on it. For this, there's nothing we really need to do, and by the end of the season it will fill in, it will be fine. What's tougher than Pachysandra? And again, this was just a strange polar vortex like event, but while I'm up here I want to show you something. Check out this Carolina allspice. If you want a shrub that is great in the shade and doesn't need anything from the gardener and the deer don't bother it. This one right here, I've got a couple of them up here, but this one right here is called Hartledge Wine. The first time I ever saw it was at the zoo, and I just love it, and it's going to get big. It's going to fill this in, and behind me is a climbing hydrangea. Again, if you want a vine that climbs like crazy, it's going all the way up that tree in the shade, climbing hydrangea is awesome. Another plus for the climbing hydrangea is pollinators just love the flowers. Now let's look at our other plants that took a beating. Well, on the way to see our second plant, I wanted to show off this Weigela shrub. Indestructible, sun or shade, the deer don't want it, and a real beauty. Well, the number one gardening question of all time, especially in the mid-Atlantic states, is why doesn't my hydrangea bloom? But again, after that anomaly in December, this is what everybody is asking me about. I've got new growth from the bottom for my hydrangea and these just sticks up here, and I've told them wait as long as you can. Maybe some of these buds will do something for you, but it's time. They have to come off. And so hopefully, and I can't remember what variety this is, but hopefully it's one of these varieties that puts blooms on new wood and old wood. This is the old wood, and it's not going to bloom. And so we'll get this off and say our prayers. All right, we'll take a look at this through the season, see how it does. Now we had the best, we've got one that's okay, and we have one that I don't know what's going to happen. So let's go take a look at that. Well, here's the heartbreaker. This one took it the worst. This is a shrub called Kruljac. Usually blooms in the end of April, stays green all winter long, evergreen, but that cold spell just it makes it look awful. There's new growth coming from below. There's new growth on some of these stems, but anything that's dead, like this, it needs to be removed. Dead is dead. And so I've got shrubs in various stages of looking okay and looking really bad. We'll take a look at those, but for now I'm just going to remove this dead wood. I'm going to start right here because there's some new growth on there, but take off the dead stuff. We gotta get down here. And you know, the thing is, when you get down to it, it still has some green in it. We know the plant is alive, it's just this top was killed by that cold spell. Easy. Cutting off this dead wood should encourage the shrub to push up more from the bottom, and I can see that's happening here. But let me show you the other ones, because a couple of them are worse, but some are better. Well, here's one plant that was barely affected by the cold, but where do you see these other two? So two of my oldest specimens looked like this. The whole thing basically is going to have to be cut to the ground. So off to work we go. I'm going to get down in there somehow. Well, I'm glad that job's done. Meet me in the garden. I have 3 plants that self-sow, which makes gardening so easy. Come on. Well, this is my favorite self-sowing plant. It throws seeds everywhere, and it's a perennial, and the thing that makes it special is it blooms from April all the way through November. You know, most perennials go, who knows, 3, 4, 5, maybe 8 weeks if you're lucky, but this has such a long bloom time, and it's indestructible. Again, it'll grow in the sun, it'll grow in the shade. The deer don't want to touch it, and I just love this plant called Corydalus lutea. It doesn't have a common name, so it's not as popular as it should be, but I'll tell you what, you put this in your garden and you're just going to love it. I've got 2 more plants that self-sow that I want to show you. This is Nicotiana. Oftentimes it's an annual. This one is a tender perennial, but it doesn't come back year after year for us except by dropping seeds everywhere. And it is an amazing plant that when it starts growing up, it puts these tubular white flowers on, and this one's called Jasmine Tobacco. It's a flowering tobacco. And oh, when the afternoon comes and the sun starts to set, it'll release its fragrance. And I've got a bunch of them here. I just want to split them up, put them back into this bed, give them some water, and they're going to go nuts. I gave some of these to a friend, and he's just blown away. His whole one bed is just filled with them. And this is why we like things that self-sow. We don't have to do anything with them. In this case, yeah, I'm splitting them up, but if I didn't, they'd do their thing. I have a big group of them here. You know, we want to do this. You know, this might be coming up from the root as opposed to the seeds. That's interesting, because it should not be able to overwinter here. We want to do this on a day where the sun's not beating down on the area that we're working in. All right, we'll get some water on these, and then we'll go take a look at our last self-sowing plant. Whenever you water, you really want to soak them in. You want those roots to follow that water down. My last self-sowing plant is a perennial called meadow rue, and it is a beauty. Again, the deer don't have any interest in it. It grows in dappled shade and then throws seeds everywhere, and we get different colored flowers from just the natural hybridization between plants. Well, you should have taken a look at these tulips last week. They were amazing. They are a variety called Pittsburgh, but without the H. They're named actually for a city, Pittsburgh, Kansas. Close enough for me. They're growing in my flower bed, which I got from Construction Junction, a cool place that has all sorts of stuff that's recycled. But now these tulips are at this point, I want to deadhead them. I want to get those seed heads off because I want the plant to put all its energy into its bulb and not into making the seeds. And this is a super easy job. You know, we'll do deadheading during the summer too on certain plants, but for the tulips, it's a must because we want to get these to bloom again next year. Going in here next though is actually tomatoes. This is a no-till bed. That's how I garden, without tilling. And we're going to put the tomatoes in between these in between the foliage of these tulips. And we will just put these right in the compost pile. Boy, this was a pretty tulip. All right. Now it's time for Talking Trees from the Davey Tree Expert Company. I'm joined again by Rob Kruljac. He's an assistant district manager for the Davey Tree Expert Company in the Pittsburgh North office. We're talking all about pruning, and my first question is, what are we not pruning right now?
We're definitely not pruning oaks or elms during the summer months.
Why?
They're susceptible to diseases during the summer that makes them safe to prune in the wintertime. So we don't want to take any chances, oak wilt or Dutch elm disease in those trees.
So this is the perfect example of why you have to have an ISA certified arborist come, because if some just guy in a truck comes, first off, he's just going to want business from you. And then if he cuts an oak, it could be devastating, right?
Absolutely. If it gets oak wilt, it's as good as dead. There's nothing you can do to stop it once a tree has it. And then once a tree has it, it can spread into the other trees around it. So you can really open a can of worms.
So let's talk about the tools and sharp tools and clean tools, right?
Yes, sharp and clean. We want to make nice clean cuts when we're pruning. We don't want ragged edges and ragged bark. And we also want to sterilize our tools before we prune, especially when we're moving from tree to tree to tree.
Okay, so I have a pruning job for you today. And you're looking at it.
Yeah. So I asked when I got here, why do you want to prune this branch?
It's in people space. You come walking through here and you get a crab apple in your head.
Right. Steals your hat.
So this is an interesting tree in the fact that 10 years ago, Davey came here, a pine tree had fallen on it. I love it because, you know, that's where the dishes used to be done. Now we have a dishwasher. I love her. And just kidding. I want to see the flowers.
Yes.
You know, so
we want to maintain the tree, but give us some elevation.
Yeah, every time you're walking through here, it's just it's a pain.
So like 6 to 8 foot is usually a good elevation height, because even with some moisture on it after a rain or something, it's going to droop a little bit lower. So if we get up into that level, you should be okay to pass underneath of it.
How do I know where this cut should be made?
Well, I usually like to start small and work back to a big cut. The smaller the cut we can make on a tree, the better, because it's easier for that tree to seal that wound over. So if we can minimize big cuts, we want to try to do that.
All right.
If we can't accomplish our goal in that way, then we keep going back till we find the right elevation.
All right. Where are you going to start?
I'm going to start out here towards the end. I can almost reach 8 foot on my tiptoes with my fingers up. So if I can get it up into this space, maybe we can do that with some smaller branches. If not, we can take this one all the way back to that union up above.
All right, I'm stepping out and we're going to watch you do your thing.
Sounds good.
So I want to keep as much of the tree as possible.
Okay.
How do you start?
I'm going to start towards the ends, cutting back to unions where I can basically train your tree to grow up into the space we'd like to have it and not down into where it's, we're interfering with it. So.
Is that it?
Yeah, what do you think, Doug?
I'm going to do a test right now. Okay, I can get by.
You seem to fit.
Oh, that was easy. So I was assuming that this whole big branch was going to have to come off. I mean, all you had to do was use your pruners, but I've seen you do this before. You can't just make one cut here because this is so heavy, it would just kind of tear the bark off, right? So you need to do more than one cut, right?
Absolutely.
You cut out here first somewhere.
Yes. The area right around the base of the branch where it's attached to the main part of the tree, there's special cells on that branch collar that will seal that wound off. So if we were to just start at the top and cut that branch off, if that bark were to tear back into the main part of the tree, that wound would have a hard time sealing. So in order to remove a branch properly without having the tear, you start out here and take the majority of the weight off.
Yeah, all this would come off.
Yes, take all of that off.
And you have about this much left.
Exactly, and then that little stub is light enough that you can, hand saw it or use your pole saw or even pole clip to cut it off at the branch collar without the worry of it ripping back to the tree.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you, my friend.
No problem, anytime.
Appreciate it. I'm telling you, every time. You're strong.
I'm sorry.
Well, our St. Patrick's Day planting of peas in the vegetable garden is going like gangbusters. I've got them in containers here, a smaller version. This is Shiraz Purple, one of my favorites. Shiraz Purple Snow, actually it's snow pea. And I'm using these golf clubs to support them. I did a story on a guy who worked at a golf course. When these clubs were left and lost and found for longer than like a year, he took them home, put them in his garden. I love the idea. He came to visit me at this garden and gave me a bunch of these golf clubs. Now this is just an example of the garden's for you. And I love this stuff, crazy stuff like this, but you might not like it, and that's fine. But for me, I just love this crazy stuff, my black and gold flamingos, all sorts of crazy stuff. All right, let's finish up. Well, I hope you're having a great start to the season. That was fun today. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. That's just how YouTube analytics work. And until next week, keep planting, and we'll see you then.